thinking about this the other day. I was like, man, why did I first start like CrossFit? Why did I go to my box and like start working out? And it was beyond just I want to be fit or like all the vanity things. Like I wanted to look good for the girls. I think I was 13 at the time, and I was, it was like it was really vain. It was like I want to look good at the pool, and I was like, no, I was attracted to this idea that when you went in there, you would, let's just say you would do your burpees, right? And at the end, you would go give the coach your score and say, Coach, I got, whatever, 13, 17 on the 100 burpees for time. That's a horrible score, but I just made something up. But the point is this, is that when I did that, when I gave my coach my score, there was trust. There was trust between me and the coach that said, hey, the score I'm giving you, coach, is correct. It's true. It's fair. It's accurate for the work that I did. And that if I didn't do that, it wasn't necessarily that the coach would come down on me. It was that the community would, right? Like I would have this reputation that, hey, Micah's a cheater. Micah shaves 2 or 3 reps here and there. And all of a sudden, Micah has a reputation of cutting his reps, of cheating his reps. And so there's this not only personal accountability, but then there's this group accountability. And that trust is only as good. I don't know if you're familiar. I want to say it's Seth Godin that talks about this, but that there's different types of trust. There's this predictability trust that says, Snorri, that we agreed to 8:00 this morning, and we won your time. So there's a predictability trust that says I'm going to get on here at 8, and you're going to get on here at 1, and it's going to be great. That's predictability.
Yep.
Then there's this vulnerability trust that says, hey, I'm not going to put you in a compromising situation where you might have to compromise your morals or your values. Like I'm going to be buck naked with you, so to speak. Like what I say is what I mean. And that not only can you expect me to show up on time, but you can expect me to do it with high character. And I think with where I'm going with this is I think with CrossFit, we've lost a little bit of both. We've lost a little bit of showing up to the class and saying, hey, I've done 100 burpees. Coach, my time is 13:17. We've lost a little bit of that. There's that predictability aspect. They sometimes don't do what they say. And then there's the vulnerability thing where, over the past several years, I feel the pot, if you will, has been brewing tremendously. And out of that has overflown some really good things, but also some really negative things that I think have impacted the community negatively. And one of the reasons I'm excited to have you on is because A, you work with some of the biggest athletes in the space, but B, your perspective is different than, say, just, the average American in their box that only sees those 4 walls. You are all over the world, and I think your perspective, not that one is more important than the other, but it's simply more vast than maybe just someone that's simply going to their box. So I know that was a very lengthy intro, but I just want to say thank you for coming on, and extremely excited to have you, Snorri.
Well, thank you for having me on, and thanks for that intro. It took me a few seconds to acknowledge where you were going with it, but I got it in the end. So thanks for that. Yeah, certainly the challenging times that we're living in, and that just doesn't extend to CrossFit only. It extends to pretty much everything in the world, and there are so many things that need to be thought of. I don't think this is new. I just think there's so much more awareness now than there was. Everyone can be called out on social media instantly. Everyone can join the conversation. There is, you can't get away with doing things that you got away with in the past. There's always someone watching. So I think that's a part of the situation that we're finding ourselves in now. But if we just jump right into it, that there is a situation right now. And it's not necessarily a situation that is hard to solve. It's more of the stubbornness of sticking to principles or sticking to some rules that were set, rules that weren't perfect when they were set, and there doesn't seem to be willingness to bend those rules or rethink these rules unless there is great pressure from somewhere being applied. And I'm making implications now, and I'm assuming things that I maybe shouldn't be. So I'll try to tread lightly because, of course, I am speaking on the behalf of athletes whose livelihood is based on the sport and who live, breathe, and shit this sport every single day. You know, it's the respect towards an athlete who dedicates his life to CrossFit. It's such a big dedication. You're leaving so many things behind. It's really hard to be in school and being an elite CrossFitter with games aspirations, or to be holding down a job and being an elite CrossFitter with games aspirations. It really, if you're going to succeed in this needs to be everything you do. And to some, there are hurdles. There are things in the road that need to be gone around or gone over. And in that respect, when we look at, we're at the top 300 in the world now. There is a filtering progress that takes place. It filters from an X 100,000 people through the Open, down to the top 10% of that in the quarterfinals, down to 300 people. When you're down to there, shouldn't it be the primary objective of the governing body of the sport to make sure that every single one of those persons gets out on a competition floor and tests their fitness against 30 other people, even though it doesn't go by those rules that say that if you were born in Asia, but you have lived in America your whole life, your passport says Asia, therefore you have to go to Asia. And computer says no exceptions. Oh, you're a political refugee, and if you leave the country, then you will never be let back in. Well, that's your fucking problem, not ours. I mean, this is kind of the attitude that we are faced with. And the athletes who are facing it, they're not employees of CrossFit. They're not paid by or compensated by CrossFit in any way. They pay to participate. They pay fees to be there. And the treatment that is being shown to them, I may be unfair here. I don't have the whole picture, but I do have the whole picture when it comes to the athletes that I am representing. It feels inconsistent. And it feels like some get more privileges than others. And there will be excuses and there will be reasons put forth that when pushed forth convincingly, even I will buy into it and think to myself for that moment, yeah, okay. It's because they set up this continence thing and therefore things cannot be changed around. But in essence, the more I think about it, what about this promise of inclusivity and fairness and all those things that they have been hammering on? Where is all of that when you have 300 athletes who have gotten to this stage? I assume that no more than 10 to 15 of those 300 are being faced with a challenge of this sort. Why isn't it just dealt with? Come on. I mean, get these people out on a competition floor and let them finish their season. If they progress through that to the games, then perfect. If they don't, then at least they had a fair crack at it. Rant over.
Wow, you just made my job so easy yet so hard. The paradox. First of all, you're a natural at this. Like I always love when I have a guest on that just brings us through the timeline, and I don't even have to ask the question. I'm like, okay, we can just pick up. So just for context for everyone listening,
Yeah.
as you outlined, you had the open, and then we cut down to 10%, and that was what we called quarterfinals, and then the
Yes.
top, in North America at least, the top 120 females and 120 males from the quarterfinals went to, again, this is North America, went to 4 semifinals. So that would be 30 per semifinal is where we are. So on, I guess it was Tuesday morning, I'm working out. So I'm in Central Time. I'm working out, and my phone, it's about 9:30 Central Time here. My phone starts blowing up. And normally, like, I don't answer my phone. If I'm working out, like, this is my religious time. You don't interrupt me when I am in the iron cage, baby. Anyways, so, and my phone starts blowing up. And people that are, like, normally wouldn't call/text that at that particular time were calling/texting. And they said, have you seen this? And what they were referring to, have you seen this? This was a photo, a graphic on the Instagram, the social media of the Granite Games, where they announced Mal O'Brien as a competitor. Just 18 hours prior to that announcement, and I've got the screenshots to prove this, I'm not making it up. Just 18 hours prior to that announcement, the Atlas Games, which, if those aren't familiar with it, is in Canada versus Minneapolis, which is in the States, had announced Mal O'Brien as being a competitor at the Atlas Games. It was very clear that CrossFit, once they placed you, that is where they placed you. It said in the rule book, there were 2 items. You can go read it for yourself. There were 2 items, folks, that said how you would be placed this year. It said 1, geographical location, and 2, quarterfinal placement. So now that we've set the context so people can follow along, and we've given some ground rules here, there, and what Snorri's talking about, there was an unprecedented removal of Mal O'Brien from the Atlas Games in Canada that has multiple travel restrictions. It's a lot harder to get to than, obviously, if you're in the States, you're just going to Minneapolis. It's really easy to get to. I mean, that's where my wife qualified. That's where we're going. I'll be Granite Games as well. And this is an unprecedented move from the Atlas Games to the Granite Games. And what I think we're going to go into next, or at least what I would, if it's okay with you, is if you would outline, so we can just get some facts before we get into the conjecture, some facts around some of the specific athletes, because I went to find the post on your IG this morning, and I believe you had taken it down, but I still want to give you a chance to explain to everyone the athletes specifically you represent that are facing, and I don't believe I'm choosing my words unwisely, I would say monumental distress when it comes to where CrossFit is sending them and the issue that arises being sent there, potentially to the point that it could be, for some, career ending.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. First off, I'm not hating on Mal O'Brien at all.
Neither am I.
My first reaction was, okay, terrific. She needed a change. They changed it. They dealt with it. There is hope. There is good in the world. Athletes are being met where they're at. Their cases are being considered, and they are being moved so that they can enter a competition floor and continue their season. I have since learned the reasons for why Mal was moved, and those are valid reasons, and I welcome it, and I'm happy about it. The reason I took down my post was, in essence, because many read into it that it was negative towards Mal. And that's why I took it down, because there is no negativity whatsoever from my side to Mal O'Brien. I think she is an exceptional ambassador for the sport. She is one of the future stalwarts of the sport. And the fact that her season is being protected by meeting her midway, moving her to a semifinal that she can actually participate in is only a good thing. I do not see a single negative thing there other than the clumsiness of not dealing with this internally beforehand, so that she wasn't announced at the Atlas Games and then at the Granite Games, which just looks clumsy and unprofessional, and there was no need for it. And I do feel for the event organizers at the Atlas Games, because they were robbed of a high-profile, ticket-moving athlete. So there are the negatives to that, but my book on how Mal was handled, it's all love from here. I'm very positive towards that. I have since learned that there is an American athlete, Logan Collins, who is also unable to travel to Canada, but he was not met the same way. His case has not been handled the same way. I don't know him, and therefore I can't speak on what has been done since then, but that's at least what I have heard and been told about, and what has been reported in the media. Anyways, the people that relate to me, one of whom is Brute Strength's own Roman Khrennikov, and he should just be handed a fucking ticket to the games directly. He shouldn't even have to do a season, that guy. He has paid his dues. He has gone a longer distance and gone through more distress. And he has gone through all of this. I mean, people receiving, having their preferences met with not being vaccinated or not. He had to. And he couldn't get vaccinated in his homeland because they use a different type of vaccination there that isn't approved anywhere else. So he had to go to Hungary twice for a vaccination. He had to go to Poland for a U.S. embassy and stay twice as well to get his passport validated and visa stamped and everything. The previous 4 years ahead of this, he had to go through qualifying for the games only to be denied a visa or an entry to the United States. Then his country starts a war. So he has to get out of there as fast as he possibly can, because borders are closing to Russian citizens left, right, and center, even though he has nothing to do with this war and has strong opinions against it. He still was yet again faced with having to remove himself from where he was training, where he was living, where his wife was expecting their first child, who she has now given birth to, a healthy, beautiful boy who looks exactly like his father, but he hasn't even met his son, you know. So he's made the sacrifices, and I mean, Roman has been crushing every single competition he's been in for a while. He's earned quite a considerable amount of money through prize earnings. He's spent all of it on this process, all of it. So if someone should be awarded a Medal of Honor for how much he wants this, how far he is willing to go to compete at the CrossFit Games, it's Roman. It's undeniable. This guy, he has earned it. But what? Because, and Russia isn't even in Asia. Let's get that straight. It is in Europe. But he wouldn't be in a better position for that anyways. He is in the United States, and he is being told there is no way that we will make an exemption for you. You have two choices. You can take the chance on traveling to Korea, where the Asia semifinal takes place, or we can seed you directly into the last chance qualifier, which is an online competition taking place only a few weeks ahead of the games. So these are the options he has. They're not saying we're canceling your season, but they are saying if you cannot travel to the semifinal that you're destined for, then your only other bet is the last chance qualifier, which brings the Mal case. At least she is within her own region, continent, but she's just being moved between semifinals. So that's a layer or a step below in the priority hierarchy if we look at that. I mean, he is asking to be moved from one continent to another one. But he is not the only athlete in there. There are two other athletes. So out of the 4 males in the top 4 slots in the Asia region from the quarterfinals, 3 of them are in the United States currently. 2 of them live there, and Roman is there and staying there. And as you can imagine, after going through all of this shit to get there, he's not exactly stoked about the prospect of having to leave the United States and take his chances again on whether he can make it back or not.
So for those listening that are all about, because CrossFitters seem to be a lot about this word, and I've heard this word being thrown around a lot, and I want to be clear, this word precedent, okay? Mm-hmm. And just to get it out, I agree with every single word you just said. I wanted to start there. I could not agree. And it has nothing to do that I host a Brute Strength podcast. I just believe in doing what's right for humanity. Like, let's just start there. Like, this guy sacrificed so fucking much. But here's, for those that want to throw around the precedent word, and I'll give credit where credit's due, because this is where I got this from, was Andrew Hiller, as I was preparing for our conversation this morning. In 2018, when these things called regionals, these things where everything was divided by very clean lines, a lot like semifinals is now, and what you just referenced, that, hey, we understand what we're asking. We're asking for, he's in continent A, we want to move to continent B. That's a big move versus Mao's intercontinental. And I appreciate that you're realistic about that. And like, look, we understand what we're asking. But there's precedent for this, those that want to throw around that word. In 2018, Katrin Davidsdottir, who was living in the U.S., flew under the U.S. flag. We all know she's not a U.S. citizen. In 2018, also, Lauren Fisher was living and training and possibly even coaching in Dubai. She was listed as or flying the Dubai flag. They didn't ship her back to California, right? Like, so this idea that there's precedent or that this is unprecedented is fucking bullshit. It is. You can't tell me this hasn't happened before. And so if we can just use some level of logic and say, this is how, at least in America, how our court system is based, is off of past cases, how people have ruled, judges and courts have ruled in the past. Why can't we use the same logic here? And I think this might be going out on a limb, but any logical person could look at this and go, well, there has, in fact, been precedent for this. So why are we sitting here and having this conversation when, yes, I understand Mao is intercontinental, but there is precedent previous years that show that we can go beyond those hard lines, and that, yes, there are rules for a reason, but those rules are to make, in my opinion, our lives a lot simpler, a lot more clear-cut, right? Give great direction, but there are certain cases and certain circumstances, like the ones you've outlined very clearly here, that would supersede and maybe, just maybe, are worth a look. And so my question is, and I'm sure I know the answer to this, but I still have to ask it. Have you guys reached out to CrossFit? And if so, has there been any correspondence? Yeah, okay.
Of course, yes. You know, it's not like they are being rude to us or are just sending us a finger. It's not like that. No. But the answers are vague. The answers are, we are considering this. We are looking into it. We are evaluating things and everything. But the silver lining is always, they think, or that this all leads to the last chance qualifier being the only option to any athlete struggling to make it to the semifinal. So, and none of the athletes want the last chance qualifier. Let's make that completely clear. Not a single one of them wants another damn online competition. They want to be out on the floor, testing themselves against other athletes, in an environment that's fair with a crowd roaring and all of that. So that's the competition. That's the sport that they are in. The online part shouldn't be a factor at this point. It's fine that the last chance qualifier is an online competition because it's intended for people who went out on the competition floor in the semifinal, came up slightly short, and they get another chance through an online competition to get there. And we're all in agreement with that. That's a nice extra touch for those who were nearly there to give it another crack to get to the games. But if the last chance qualifier is the gulag of sorts, where you're just thrown in there when you don't have any other options, it's kind of defying its purpose, if you ask me. And again, it's not only the 2018 thing with Catherine and Lauren. It's also just the 2021 thing with Tia-Clair Toomey, who couldn't travel back to Australia. And a similar story, she was seeded into the Atlas Games first, which was an online competition, but then she was taken out of there and put into the MAC, I think. So,
correct.
Yes, so there have been reroutings of rules left, right, and center when there have been challenging circumstances. And I believe that's exactly what Mal was granted, and fairly so. My question is, why don't the other athletes who have made it to this top 300 stage, why aren't their requests being handled in the same way? Be it intercontinental or international, it shouldn't have to matter. They have gotten themselves into that top 300 bracket, and it's only fair that each case is evaluated. I do not believe there are more than 15, max 15 cases that would require some rerouting, and that's not an inconceivable or unfathomable thing to do. It just takes a little work to make that happen, and everyone is happy. And it's a lot less work than being in the middle of a fucking PR shitstorm because they are handling things in an uneven way.
You mentioned Logan Collins. I also spoke with another athlete. His name is Jack Rosema, who is in a similar situation, seeded to Atlas Games for reasons that I don't know if he will want me to share, so I will not. Cannot go. And he screenshotted the email from CrossFit, and I'm not shitting you. The email said, we're sorry, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was nice, okay? No doubt about it. But the solution, I'll get to the punchline, was here is the link to expedite your visa process. Look, man, I don't know about you, but to me, that's 2 middle fingers. We actually don't want to help. We just need to put something out. So if this gets, screenshotted, which it is, it's going to look okay. And, the precedent, as we've clearly stated, has been set. And I'm curious because there's other athletes as well that you have. Roman is obviously a very high profile one, huge, but there are other athletes that you have that have very similar circumstances, if not even more convincing. The gentleman's name is leaving my mind, but the gentleman that's been here quite over a decade and it pays U.S. taxes. I was floored.
Okay, let's start with it. It's Dennis Samsonov. He is better known as the fittest wizard. He's a superstar, that guy. He's got almost 2 million followers on TikTok. He's got 600-something thousand followers on Instagram. He's not really known as a CrossFitter. He's known as a really fit guy doing wacky dance videos. And he's very popular. I mean, he is transcending the sport, and his followers following him and his journey in CrossFit, he's just bringing new people in. He is, from a marketing standpoint, he is a wet dream for CrossFit to get that guy, in essence. He's a great guy. He's a terrific athlete. He's lived in America for 16 years. He comes over on a DACA visa because he's underage. He's a minor when he comes to America, and that type of visa, as soon as you step 1 feet over the border, either to Mexico or Canada or wherever the fuck else, all your privileges are lost. You're not welcome back. So for him to have to travel to Asia, it's impossible. It's if he would have put in work to acquire American citizenship, which I believe he is looking into, then maybe some exemptions would have been made if he would have been at some stage at that. But he really didn't realize that it would ever come to that he would have to disown his own country for the CrossFit Games. So him not being met with any leniency, it's a bad marketing move because the guy is a superstar, and it's just a ridiculous move overall, just like it is to cause any of those 300 athletes problems when they've made it all the way over there. They can say that he could have read the rule book and he could have known that this was going to happen, and therefore he should just not participate because it wouldn't get him anywhere. But what kind of a fucking attitude is that when you have an athlete of that caliber who is only bringing good things to the sport?
And I think that's where this whole deal is met with some level of resistance. And I mean, this whole deal is a deal with Mal. And I don't, and look, folks, I'm not using, I want to be clear, I'm not using Mal as an example because I don't like her or Snorri doesn't like her. I have zero beef with Mal O'Brien. I think she's a great person. She's super fit. There's absolutely zero distaste in my mouth. However, where the distaste comes in is simply that the treatment that Mal was awarded or given is not consistent with others that have equal or more dire need to have the same treatment awarded to them. And it really comes down to just that simplistic. You can't tell me, no one can convince me that just because you're not the number one person in quarterfinals that you shouldn't get the same treatment. If it's been done, then your case also should be, I think, considered seriously. And it brings up, another point that we haven't spoken about, but while we're bringing the last chance qualifier up, is Annika Greer. And I know people have their comments and their thoughts because CrossFitters seem to be very hard and fast. And I appreciate it. It's like you did the rep or you didn't. I appreciate that type of veracity when it comes to the sport. However, things, and I've said this on this podcast a lot, people want to make things so damn black and white, and the reality is the world is very 50 shades of gray. It just is, people. If you think it's just as black and white as you seem, you're missing it. There's so much more nuance than you'll ever know, and that I'll ever know, and that they'll Snorri that will ever know. But while we're on the topic, Annika Greer, and I was talking to Cooper Marsh the other day, who I'm sure you know.
Okay. Yeah, we're friends.
Yeah.
I know all about the Annika case. Yep.
Fantastic. So here are my quick thoughts and the context for those listening in case they don't know. Annika did the workouts in quarterfinals, had proof. She's in other people's videos that are clearly time-stamped. She has her videos that are clearly time-stamped. She has the timestamps of when she uploaded them to YouTube. It was well before the cut line. She finished her competition a whole day early. You had Thursday through Sunday, and she finished it on Saturday. Has all the proof in the world. There was a technological, to keep it simple, glitch in the uploading process, and she did not upload workout number 5. There were 5 tests. In the quarterfinals, number 5 did not get uploaded. She emails CrossFit. The deadline is like 12 p.m. Pacific. She emails them 14 to 15 minutes later after that deadline and says, "Oh my gosh, I don't see my workout score number 5 populated." And they say, "I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do." And there was no exception granted. Now, you might ask, as you're listening to this, you might go, okay, well, why is he bringing this up? I'll tell you why I'm bringing it up. Because Snorri brought up the last chance qualifier, which is being offered as I would say, no offense to the people in the last chance qualifier, but as a concession for you not being able to meet CrossFit's criteria of you needing to go here and there, and more on that in a second. But I believe, this may be controversial, if we're going to make these exceptions, why not allow Annika the same one? For whatever reason, I'm not saying a semifinal, but let her into the last chance qualifier. What does that hurt? She's the future of the sport, just like Mal is, and you cannot convince me otherwise. She is a beautiful person. I think she's going to do great things for this sport, and CrossFit needs to fucking realize something, is that they are only as good as the athletes competing in this thing. Might I add, really quick, CrossFit Games athletes pay thousands of dollars to attend the CrossFit Games. And if you're overseas, it could be
Even
tens of thousands of dollars. So let's get this shit straight, everybody. We got the pecking order all wrong. I'm not saying the athletes rule the roost, but they have a bigger contribution than we're currently giving them credit for. And that's where
Correct.
I'll let you go for it.
I mean, the Annika case, again, as a marketing person, why wouldn't you look at her and think, let's do everything we can to integrate her, to meet her somewhere? Because, rightly so, she's one of the futures of the sport, and she is just a terrific ambassador for it.
Yes.
Her story, she has all the proof in the world. She did all the reps. She crushed that last workout. She did it against someone else whose submission was accepted, and Annika features in that video. So all her footage, all her evidence, all those things are in order. The fact that the submission didn't arrive on time, okay, some rules need to be withheld. But why don't they look at it and give it a slide, rather than to find themselves in this shitstorm because the computer says no? I mean, if she didn't have any proof, if she didn't have a case, then case closed. But the fact that she did make a mistake shouldn't have to be punished so severely. Her season is over. And I will again just bring up that marketing point, because she is to the benefit of the sport.
Agreed.
Annika stole the show at Wadapalooza. I had known her before that. I had known of her. Her management team are friends of mine, and we speak a lot amongst ourselves. And they had alerted me to her and the talent she possesses far long ago. So I had been aware of her for a long time, and I was looking forward to seeing her really take this season by a storm as one of those young athletes coming in. The young females coming in, Mal and Emma Carey already took it. Emma Lawson, who I represent, is coming in really, really strong now. Annika Greer, Olivia Kersetter. There's a lot of young girls coming in strong. I'm probably forgetting 3 or 4 that have every reason being mentioned. So just on that note, why don't they look objectively at it, think it through, and make some sort of an arrangement for her to return back? Because it was a technical glitch. It wasn't that she screwed the workout up. She did all the work. There was just a technical glitch. And she shouldn't be punished this severely for it. I can guarantee she will never screw up a submission again. That will never happen again. But besides the point, why do they have to act like this when it's a community sport where one of their values is supposed to be whatever that was.
Inclusivity.
Inclusivity. Yeah. Come on. If you want the fittest people to be there, make it so that the fittest people can be there. And make some bend a few rules like you've done a million times in the past when it's done for the correct persons, then why don't you do it for all? That's what I'm asking for. And if things need to be changed or rearranged, or if rules need to be amended along the way, well, that happens everywhere. They even did it at the games last year. There was an event where there was lifting and running, inside and outside. They even changed the event in the middle of a competition. They saw in the first leg of the event that something wasn't the way it was supposed to be, so they just changed it on the fly. So it's not like they don't change things on the fly when it is of convenience to them.
I think the point you're making is fantastic, and that's why I wanted to have you on, because you have so many examples of this, and the people saying, well, the rules are the rules. And look, I agree. Like, they're rules for a reason, but the rules are only as good as your enforcement of those rules. And if you might say, okay, well, what do you mean by that? Well, let's just look at workout 3, which Brian Friend from quarterfinals, which Brian Friend has outlined, if not one time, a million times, which is this. Mm-hmm. CrossFit has said they are not going to take the erroneous scores, and this is the shuttle run workout, where folks did literally, you can go watch, folks, they're still up, half of the scores. So there are people that are getting 6 minutes in that workout. Might I add, it's impossible to do that workout.
Because they did it wrong. They
exactly.
skipped a bunch of runs. Yeah.
Exactly. So this idea that there's not precedent for any of the shit we're talking about is absurd. It's literally illogical. It doesn't exist. So the only thing that CrossFit does is change their own shit. The only precedent CrossFit has set is the fact that they are unprecedented. And I know that's harsh, but there's no other way of putting it nicely. And I'm not attacking one person in particular, because I don't know who makes these rules, and to be honest, I don't care. The point is rules exist to make a better society, to make a more flourishing society. Let's help that society flourish. That's all we're saying here. And the idea that someone should be punished, the punishment in the case of Annika Greer does not fit the crime. I don't care what anyone says. It just simply doesn't, to end someone's season when they had ample, and I mean ample, proof. Now, I understand. If you didn't meet the submission deadline, there does have to be some type of penalty. Like, I get it, because there were 120 or 119 people that did do that, or however many people, right? So I understand that. But to say, nope, we're drawing a hard and fast line in the sand. It's over. It's done. You're out. Ejected. Done.
Exactly.
What?
Yeah. It feels like they're digging their own grave a little bit there. And after all the shit the sport has been through ever since the Glassman debacle, ever since many of the big name athletes said we're standing up, we're walking out, we're not going to be a part of this, through all those COVID challenges and all of that, why don't they welcome some changes now? Why don't they look inwards and think, okay, we are a community sport, we are based on a community spirit, and rather than exiling people, we need to work towards integrating them in a way that is fair for all. It does not feel like that's the case. They want to have the last word on everything. It's their way or no way, and we are to put up or shut up. That's how it comes to me. And just with every day that passes, I become more disgruntled about this whole thing. I have, as a manager of 16, 17 games level athletes, I have had so much communication with CrossFit HQ. And 99% of it has been positive, has been forward thinking. And if I only use the example of Roman Khrennikov, they really did put in a shift for him. They really did help out with acquiring stuff, certificates, writing letters, doing stuff that meant a great deal for his visa process that eventually ended with him being granted a visa. So they are not all bad. And the people in there, they're friends of mine that work there, and I have had a great line of communication all the way up to the top. But the handling of things, probably starting with the Annika Greer thing and then just spiraling into what we've been discussing here, has been like they're just digging the hole deeper. They're just making a bigger wall between them and us. And it doesn't need to be that way. And it shouldn't be that way. We should be having a constructive conversation on these are the problems. Here are ideas on how to solve them. Let's discuss it and let's find solutions. And let's end this season on a high note. It will still end with the fittest people on top. It will.
You know, something that was discussed, I think, or has been discussed at length is a few things. One, you know, I'm not sure in the state of Montreal this year that there should have been talking solutions, that there should have been a semifinal there. And that's nothing against any Canadian human being. I just think that there would have been a better idea for either we go back to back at Granite like they did it, you know, with Mac and Syndicate, maybe something like that, or hell, put one in the West there. But the point is, I don't know if that was the best idea. Secondly, in terms of the Asian semi, should have 100% been in Dubai instead of Korea.
Exactly.
Korea presents a slew of problems. And for the athletes getting in, the incredible amount of protocols, and for those listening, you can just go look how to enter Korea, and you will be shocked. And I'm sure you could probably speak to all the protocols better than I could. But it's like, you think it's hard to get into Canada. No. Try to get into Korea right now. And I'm just curious, and maybe I don't know the answer to this. I'm asking you, like, how do we keep this from happening? How do we have greater awareness around, like, why was it seeded in Korea when it could have been in Dubai? Like, I'm baffled. Like, it's almost like we just this is what it seems like to me, outsider looking in. You probably have more information. I feel like we just put our head under the sheets and we just hope it's all going to blow over. It's going to be okay. And that's not it. And I'm just confused how we've gotten here.
I think in this sense, there are event organizers that apply to have a semifinal.
Okay.
And the application process, I haven't seen it. I don't know which criteria needed to be met.
Okay.
But those event organizers, they are bankrolling their events.
Got it. Okay.
The events that I know, I mean, Lowlands and Strength in Depth, where I know the event organizers quite well. I mean, They are just staging their own event there. They are bringing in their own sponsors to it, and it's just a luxury thing that there is a CrossFit Games semifinal taking place at the same time. Lowlands, for example, is a big community event. It's staged in a huge conference hall with 2 or 3 competition floors going on, and only one of those floors is the semifinal. Then there is just an intermediate and RX.
Wow.
And I mean, there's just a bunch of people competing there. So that's the way that event is constructed, and it's more like just a shot in the arm to get to be the semifinal, and they probably pay a fee to be able to be the semifinal and all of that. So the seeding process here is an application process. And I'm not even sure that anyone in Dubai even applied to have a semifinal.
Okay.
For that matter. So,
okay.
and I'm some of what I'm saying here is guesswork, but this is what makes sense to me. Anyways, I know for a fact that there are independent event organizers who are staging these events.
Okay.
That's a fact I know.
Okay, well then, yeah, and this is why I'm excited to ask you these questions, because you would know way more than me in this. So you said that these guys and gals, because this is going to really help people understand this. These guys and gals are having to find their own sponsors. They're having to reach out to Rogue. Like, this isn't like, oh, hey, CrossFit is getting you all this or paying. No, it's we have to do that.
There might be a package when you apply for the semifinal. What you get with that package is this and this and this and this. But still, outside of that, they have their own independent sponsors, and they sell the slots in their own vendor village. They host their own ticket sales, etc.
So if a semi were to flop, it would be at the expense of the event organizers or the privately held group. Is that my understanding?
Exactly.
Not CrossFit.
Just like the sanctionals. And I know I lost a lot of money by hosting one of the sanctionals in the past. So I know all there is to know about that. Yeah, the Reykjavik CrossFit Championship. Shit, we lost so much money on that. But it was a cool event.
Holy shit.
I'll admit that, yeah.
Was it just because of how, like, I mean, give people an idea. I mean, I don't expect you to give any numbers, but like, is it just because of like how expensive it is, like, to do these things, or like?
It was here in Iceland. We don't have any proper venues for this. We don't have the amount of stands, so we actually built the stands specifically for the event, and that was a headache, and that was just an idea that we should never have made into fruition. But I mean, we had 4,000 people at the event. It was a terrific event, but we went overboard in the production of it, and we weren't helped by the fact that one of the two Icelandic airlines went bankrupt 2 months ahead. So a good few people who had purchased tickets didn't even show up, and there were no international tickets sold after that. So we were unfortunate with a few things, and went overboard with things that we figured would cost less, but then ended up costing more. So all of that is on us. But the moral of the story is it was on us the whole time. It was never going to fall on anyone else than us.
So you're about to see how I'm going to tie this all together now. You didn't
give it to me.
You didn't think I was going to come full circle with this, but watch.
Give it to me.
But watch what I just do. So I'm about to pull a Savan. I'm going to just name it that. So
now I'm excited.
So several years, a couple years ago, and I'm sure you're very familiar with this story, the Atlas Games got into some trouble. And by some trouble,
I remember that quite clearly, yes.
Okay. So they went bankrupt, and it was honestly a big stink. Just for those that don't have any idea of what I'm talking about, it was a big stink where the tickets sales weren't going to be refunded. It was changing companies. It was changing hands. It was people just had a sour taste in their mouth. And then, the following year, COVID happens, and Trudeau's wife gets Trudeau is the prime minister there of Canada gets COVID. He shuts down basically Canada in a matter of like minutes. And the Atlas Games is poof, gone, see ya, like a magic trick. And
I mean, it was brutal because all the athletes were there. It was just a day before the competition that they shut it off, so it was extra brutal.
Ooh, Jesus, yeah, you got all those people there, right? All these, not just Americans, but then people from all over that presumably were there for this thing.
The spectators and everything. I mean, loads of people had showed up already.
So when you pull an athlete that you've already announced, like Mal O'Brien, and everything that comes with Mal O'Brien, assuming, and I know this is a low blow, but if you think Mal O'Brien, guess who you also think? You think Matt Frazier. Let's just be honest with each other. Like, everybody's thinking it, so let's just say it.
Yeah, I mean, there's enormous value in them too. Of course there is an enormous value.
Rightfully so. Their contribution to the sport, who they are, what they've been able to accomplish. I'll say this statement, feel free to disagree with it. I believe, in my personal opinion, it's fair to say that pulling someone like Mal O'Brien from the Atlas Games is dramatically, now I don't know the percentage, but I'll just say dramatically, would dramatically affect things like ticket sales, especially international ticket sales, like people from the U.S. wanting to come watch, or places other around the world wanting to come watch Mal O'Brien, and potentially, everything that comes with her, whether it's the HWPO workouts that Matt Fraser did last year at the Granite Games, assuming he does that again, the community workouts, all those things. I think it's fair to say that dramatically impacts the bottom line of the Atlas Games.
Yes, unless it's replaced with something that holds similar value, which is hard to find. But I mean, as someone whose occupation is placing value on athletes and looking after their interests, I have a lot of interaction with event organizers. That's a big part of my job. And a primary part of that is assisting in getting promotional content their way, approving the verbiage, and approving the timeline and everything up when they can announce that these athletes are competing at their event. Because it moves the needle. That's what happens. When Sara Sigmundsdóttir is announced for the strength and depth, or for the Filthy 150 in Ireland, even the Dubai CrossFit Championship, that's like, okay, now we're on. Now things are moving. That's just the way it has been. And it's the exact same thing, of course, with Mal, and even to a greater extent, Matt Fraser, even though he isn't competing, he is, it doesn't even need to be debated. He is the biggest figure in the sport.
Agreed.
He's bigger than all of the rest. And he is in terms of social media, in terms of just his name and his brand. And now, him not being on the competition floor means spectators are likely to get a picture with him, are likely to be able to exchange a few words with him, to do a workout with him, and all of those things that make it even more exciting to go to that event. So he would have been there in a coach's capacity, so I'm not going to speculate even that he would have been doing anything else. But just the presence of him being there is, of course, of great value, and value that has been earned. So, yeah, I mean, it feels to me like the Atlas Games just can't catch a break. I mean, they had Tia last year. Even though it was an online competition, it would have been very good for the brand. And then she was removed from there and placed in a live competition stateside. And then, of course, those scenes in, was it 20? It was 2020. Yeah, COVID was 2020. I mean, those, and I really felt for the guys then. I mean, it was a heartbreaking process, and I don't believe they received a lot of hate from the spectators. I think there were many spectators that thought to themselves, hey, keep the money, you need it more than I do, when everything went to shit. Because they had already arranged the hall, they had already installed the rigs and the sound system and everything. The floor was ready. They were plug and play to have an event when they were just informed, hey, you have to cancel your event. It was at the 11th hour. And I mean, I had some communication with them at that time. I had athletes that were participating there, and it was just a heartbreaking process. But they probably have also some love, some genuine love for still being there. So I have faith that the Canadian community will rally up. And they still have Pat Vellner there. They still have big names competing. The female side is looking a bit thin, but they haven't filled the roster either. So there still might be room for some switches if CrossFit are willing to do some switches, now that they already started that process, they could even this out. They could still hand the Atlas Games event organizers something to cheer about.
I agree. When you look at Atlas Games, specifically the women's field, I mean, you start to wonder. And look, guys, I know this is going to be controversial what I say, but this is just the fact. To use your words, the brand value of the women's field in the Atlas Games far supersedes that, or excuse me, of the Granite Games. The brand value of the Granite Games far supersedes that of the Atlas Games, and not just brand value, but average placement. I mean, there's so many things, and these aren't my opinions; these are the numbers. I've run them. It's quite severe. I would say it would be the word.
Yeah,
I mean, there's multiple top 15 games level athletes there, and it's crazy. I mean, you've got Danny Spiegel, Mal O'Brien, Fee Sagafi, Emily Rolfe, Amanda Barnhart. I mean, like, holy shit. I mean, anyways,
True.
But and at least to my knowledge of looking at this, there is no other field, at least not women's side, that is that stacked in terms of a semifinal goes. But that's my opinion. There's been a lot of, as we've even talked about over the last hour, there's been a lot of debate on what can be done going forward, and this is where I kind of want to head next is what can truly be done. I don't want people to listen to this and think, well, man, they just bitched for an hour and a half. Like I don't
exactly. Kind of feel dirty because that's all I've been doing.
Yeah.
I haven't offered a single solution here.
Right, but I genuinely want this. I don't want this to be a piece of hate mail. I want this to be truly constructive. Not that anyone gives a shit if it is or not, but I do. But me going to bed at night and my character, I want to feel like I'm putting something of value into the world. It's important to me, and I know because I've listened to enough of you on podcasts or followed you on social media that you're the same way. You're all about adding value to the people you connect with, and I think that's honorable. And I want to start with quarterfinals and kind of work our way forward. Okay. I think if I may, and I'll offer something, and I'm curious to hear what you say. I think in the current stage, there is too much load and not enough infrastructure or support for that load, and that load being the load of athletes that are currently doing quarterfinals, and then the infrastructure to then properly judge / filter request, those types of things by CrossFit. And so my solution to that would be to cut down the field from top 10%, because I'm not hating on anyone, but there are people that make it that can't even do muscle up.
Can't do a single muscle up yet. True.
And so my thoughts are, let's cut it down somewhere between 3 and 5%, or 3 to 5%. So you've got 10% now. Let's cut it down to 3 to 5%. And I know the other end of that says, well, Micah, look, if you do that, man, that's a lot of people paying their $50. You would have to increase it. I think all the people, and this may be bold, I think all the serious people that do this for a living would have no problem paying an extra $50 to $75 if they knew bullshit, erroneous scores weren't going to be kept to the top of the leaderboard because there simply wasn't the infrastructure to go through them.
True. Also, this would give the open meaning again. It's, I know from the top level athletes, none of them took the open seriously. They took it just as their warm up or as their finisher. They didn't take it seriously because they knew they would have to. They would never find themselves in a scenario where they would not be top 10%. None of those people. So it would also help in bringing urgency to the athletes that if they don't perform in the open, their season might be over just right there and then. Because there is stress surrounding the quarterfinals.
Agreed.
That's where the stress kicks in. And you have maybe the TS of this world who will just steamroll the quarterfinals too. But for a medium-placed games level athlete, someone who has aspirations to be top 20 at the games, there is huge stress already at the quarterfinals level. Where it used to be in the Open before. I remember the Open. I did it so closely with Sara Sigmundsdóttir for 2 years in a row that I remember her whole process through the Open. I mean, those 2 years she won it. That were her aspirations. But still, I mean, the season had started. The rituals for a pro athlete for doing literally everything in the day to be at optimal peak condition when she was to do the workout, it had already started in the Open. It hasn't been like that since they changed the rules. And yeah, it's good for the community and all of that. But still, let's up the stakes a little bit. I mean, the community, most of those aren't even thinking about the quarterfinals. They just love to do the Open in their box along with their class, everyone doing that workout together and or attending an open gym and being there around a bunch of people trying their best. But then they just go back to work and then they get drunk on the weekend. While the athletes, they do no such thing. I mean, they're just in a season. They're in it to win it. So I wholeheartedly agree with this idea. Trim it down to something. Yes, it may cost a bit more, or just get a sponsor to cover that gap, to get all the love for, hey, this sponsor brought you the fact that your season started there, that you didn't have to waste time on the Open and wait until the quarterfinals for your season to start. So I agree with this.
As someone that represents, I mean, some of the top names in the sport, like Sara Sigmundsdóttir and BKG, I mean, if you told those people, hey, you got to pay an extra $75, or your sponsor has to pay an extra $75, so it's $125 to do quarters.
Yeah. It's a non-issue. It's a non-issue to them, but it might be an issue to some. I would anticipate that.
Right, but I would argue, I mean, look, and gosh, this is where I need Brian Friend for this, but I feel like this is a safe argument. No one makes the games that is not 1% anyways. Like,
True.
I mean, if you look at the stats from quarters and you just take the 1%, and I would probably argue that those people, if they tried, would also, ironically, be 1% in the Open. I mean, I don't see that being far-fetched. So that's why when we say, hey, bring it down from 10% to, say, 3%, that still lets in, I mean, you're still talking, let's just get some round numbers, 3,000 people. Like, that's still a lot of people. But I think it could allow CrossFit, whether your idea that they find a sponsor to cover the gap, or they just simply charge people more. But I think if you're serious, you're going to pay it. You're going to pay it.
Exactly. And this can be dealt with. Then that whole thing of the athletes paying, that's a separate matter. But that's what rolls the dice anyways. So I mean, we can't attack that place just yet. But in fact, I agree with this idea. I think between Open and quarterfinals, to have it a slimmer margin and therefore more competitive is only going to be a good thing. We will still see pretty much the same people progress from the quarterfinals to the semifinals regardless.
Yeah, I agree. Now, in terms of semifinals, there's been a lot of talk about this. I've heard some people say we need to basically go back to a regionals-esque deal, where there's hard and fast geographical lines, and if you don't like where you're seated, you basically have to get up and just move. This is the long and short of it. I'm curious from your perspective, how do you think that we go about this in a productive manner?
So I proposed an idea on how to fix it at this instance that CrossFit are probably wiping their ass with right now. I mean, it's not a perfect idea, but I mean, at least it's an idea. I presented that, why don't we allow an athlete who has been seeded to a semifinal that athlete cannot attend? Why don't we present them with the opportunity to connect with athletes who have been seeded to other semifinals that they can go to and propose a swap? Why isn't this just permitted? That once the seeding process has occurred, athletes are allowed, they have to have clear costs. There needs to be a cost for it. That the cost needs to be validated. It needs to be that visa problems, or the fact that you cannot be vaccinated in time, or that you have Lyme disease and therefore you cannot be vaccinated, and therefore you are completely in the clear for whatever it is that can be said, that you just cannot travel where vaccination is a requirement. In such an instance, you or your manager can connect with the athletes on the roster and offer them, hey, why are you up for a swap? Maybe some athletes will look at it, okay, I have better chances on that side than here. And then that's okay, then that's fine. At least this way, it's not costing someone their earned backfilling spot. It's not grinding down on any of those things. And if it's only 10 athletes or 15 athletes out of the 300 who are finding themselves in this type of a pickle, then what's the damage that it does? It does no damage whatsoever. Worst case, you cannot find an athlete who is willing to swap with you, but then at least you have that chance and you can go to the last chance qualifier. I do not think this is all that stupid of an idea, but I'm not sure it will be met with much positivity anywhere. But it would solve the problem, you know. And in this case, like for those three guys who can't go to the Asia Invitational, there could even be a sponsor involved saying, hey, I'll cover the flight and accommodation for the athlete who is willing to swap with you. There might be an athlete willing for that adventure, looking forward to going to Korea, even weighing up, okay, I might have a better chance over there than here. Why not?
I guess the one potential, like just playing devil's advocate, the one potential issue would be if you were to stack a field, right, too heavily, and then potentially, well, this is going to be controversial, but then in another field, do what now you've done to the Atlas Games women's field, where there is no premier athletes, and I know that's such a shitty thing to say. My God, I know it is. And
there is Emma Lawson. Give Emma some credit.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like, we're talking top tier games athletes. What I would say are the one seeds.
Yeah.
Right. Like, okay, and I know it's shitty, and I understand that. And Emma Lawson is, like Annika Greer, like Mal O'Brien, like Emma Carey, the future. Zero doubts in my mind. Like 100%.
Absolutely. But I mean, she's been robbed of the chance of going head to head with Mal O'Brien, which would have been hugely entertaining
for her,
exciting for everyone. Yeah, for her and for everyone in the audience. So I mean, that's but Mal wouldn't have been able to go anyways, and she has her reasons for that. It would never have worked.
Yep, I agree.
This problem starts at the place where they didn't work this out internally ahead of releasing the rosters. I mean, that's how it's presented to me. I mean, 20 hours or something pass from when she's announced at the Atlas Games over to when she's announced at the Granite Games.
19 hours.
That has, or 19. I mean, that's not on her. That's on whoever made that happen. And again, nothing against her, and I would like to just distance myself from using her name in this respect, because she is basically just a casualty of this discussion.
Agreed.
In the first place.
Yeah.
Her case was dealt with. I hope other cases can be dealt with. And I still retain hope that some reason can be shown so that the 300 qualified athletes find their way to a competition floor. It's the fair thing to do, even though some rules need to be bent. They have already bent some rules. Why not bend a few more and set those athletes up for a great season?
I think in terms, to put a nice bow on this conversation, in terms of semifinals, what I would like to see going forward is two things. One, you give athletes the opportunity to choose their semifinal. Okay, so just like last year, you allow them to seed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, this is where I want to go. It's like if you're doing like your colleges, right? I want to go to this college and this right, and then and that's how it works. And
they kind of did that. They kind of did that. They sent out a survey to all the athletes. I only saw the survey that was sent to the European athletes, and it didn't specify where you could go, but there was a comment field. Is there something you want to say? Where most athletes put in, hey, I want to go to Lowlands, I want to go to London, and whatever. And it kind of feels to me like most of the athletes got what they asked for. Or there are no complaints here on the European side that I have heard of about where the athletes ended up.
So, yes and no to that, and I just want to be fair. So it's not exactly. I'll take the U.S. for example. So I live in Birmingham, Alabama. My wife qualified for a semi in 52nd in North America. Okay, so we live 4 hours from Knoxville, Tennessee, where there are 2 semifinals. So statistically, she had a 50% chance to go to Knoxville, 4 hours away, and a 25% chance to go to Canada, and a 25% chance to go to Granite Games. We got seated at Granite Games. Okay, the girl who we know very, very well that was 50th, who also lives in Birmingham in Alabama, got seated to the MAC. Now, here's the deal: if you take 52nd, which is what my wife qualified, from the girls, and 52nd from the guys, they both got seated to Granite Games. If you take 50th from the girls and 50th from the guys, because we actually know both of them, they both got seated to MAC.
Okay. So you have seen a pattern where it was just up. It was just, okay, first, both male and female go there. Second, both male and female go there. So if you would route it all together, you would probably find a pattern of some sorts there, you think?
I feel confident in saying yes to that question.
Okay.
And outside of that, the only other pattern that I picked up on, and Brian Friend has gone over this in great depth, is they took the top 4 and they said, in North America that is, and they said top 4. Number 1, you go Syndicate. 2, you go MAC. 3, you go Granite, and the other
to make sure they aren't going against each other.
Exactly. Yeah. Super simple. Outside of that, what it appeared to be was 5 and 5 here, 6 and 6 here, 7 and 7 here. So
in that sense, they probably didn't even look at those surveys.
Exactly. So because I have friends that are seated in Atlas that aren't vaccinated, and some of which I confirmed with them put on their their sheet, hey, I'm not vaccinated, I cannot go, I don't have whatever. So how I would like to see this going forward is what they did last year, which is you got to seed your 1, 2, 3, 4. This is where I'd like to go. And then they do it based off of placement. And I understand that's not a perfect scenario either. But to your point earlier, it entices you to do better in quarterfinals. It means even more. So again, I understand there still could be number 57 that gets seeded at Atlas Games, and then you're just fucked, and we're in the same situation. But here's the caveat to that, to my system, is we could go with your system, which I think is fine, or we could go with the system of let's all be good humans. You email CrossFit and just say, hey, look, I'm not vaccinated for whatever reason. I'm not here to debate that. For whatever reason, I can't go. is there a way I can do something else? And either they can help or you can freaking switch with someone that finds that semifinal more appealing. Maybe they wanted to go there and they didn't get that chance. But I think the way we are doing it now is clearly not working.
And again, it's only 300 people, or 600 for that matter.
Yeah.
It's male and female. Okay. Yet again, it's not inconceivable to factor all of their things in. It's not inconceivable to send out a survey, drop it into a sheet, get an Excel going where you can kind of matrix the preferences and piece it together from there. This is not inconceivable. And from there, you can filter out who has issues, who can definitely not go to Canada, who can definitely not travel outside of the US, etc. And then you can make the decisions from there. And once things are announced, you have eliminated the problems. You may even have reached out to those who have those problems, had a discussion with them, and realized, okay, we have to handle Dennis Samsonov differently because he is on a refugee visa and he cannot leave the United States. Therefore, we have to handle him differently. But as the inclusive and fair company that we are, we strive to find solutions that fit for everyone.
Snorri for president.
It isn't. No, please not.
No.
I don't ever want to be president.
Me either, bro. Me either. No. Don't sign me up for that shit.
Yeah, please. Let's strike that thing out. But it's easy, and I have found myself in this situation too often. It's so easy to sit and criticize. It's so easy to write a witty comment somewhere in the comment section and feel like you conquered the discussion or whatever. By the end of the day, you have to work at this shit. You have to do it. You have to implement it. You have to put in the hours. And they have my sympathy there. They have had their set of challenges. And no just doubt. Recently with removing Dave and then Eric Rosa, whether he moved down or up or out or whatever. I mean, there have been challenges there, and I empathize with all of it. And allow us to help. Bring us in and use the community to do some of this work for you if that's the case. There are people willing to assist in making a better system, better games, and a better experience for the athletes. Look at all the volunteers for the events who go there, get nothing paid, they pay their own ticket to get there, and they work tirelessly just because they love this shit. And people like that can be leveraged to take on a lot more because by the end of the day, this is a community sport.
Yeah,
and
that's good.
Whenever there is a debacle like this, instead of sticking the head in the sand, why not just embrace and say, hey, we're in a pickle here. Can you come and brainstorm with us? What Brent Fikowski and more people have installed the PFAA, which is, I've had some great conversations with Brent, for example, on Athlete Matters. He, of course, has great insight being an elite competitor himself, knowing pretty much all the who's who in there and having a pretty wicked head on his shoulders. So it's been great to be able to have conversations with him, but it feels like he's just getting the same answers as me. It's, you guys, you aren't welcome here. Don't call us, we'll call you. That's kind of the feel. So, and us, the managers, we engage a lot. We have our own chat group. We try to strive to complement each other and to collaborate on things because there are much more athletes than managers still. So this hasn't really entered the phase where there's fierce competition amongst all of us. We're all drowning in work. So it's we try to help each other out, and even sometimes there's a brand that comes in that is looking for more than I can supply, and then I will I will call Bijan or Cooper or whoever and say, hey, they're looking for 2 more guys and I don't have them. Do you have anyone? I mean, we do business like this. I don't think it's like that in any other sport. So
Yeah.
there's even community spirit on the business side of things. So, I mean, come on. It's this isn't inconceivable. It is very well possible to find solutions that work for everyone.
Snorri, I am ever grateful for your time. Thank you for your insight, your wisdom, and I'm so. It sucks that we had to get on, and I say it sucks we had to get on here and talk about this. It sucks that this was the large part of our conversation, that this was even a thing, right? But I want to do my best to use this platform to bring some level of awareness to things that are happening, and not personally put my head in the sand. Nor, on the flip side, do I want to be a part of the problem that just cast hate, because that's, I want to be clear. And I know you know this, but to everyone that's listening, because this is going to go to Morning Chalk Up in a lot of places, that I don't wish to cast any hate. That is not my intention. My intention is to drive real change, and sometimes, that looks messy at first, as we both outlined. But the reality is, we're here to help. I think we have offered some solutions, whether it be the quarterfinals or the semifinals or both. And no, are they perfect? But the system is imperfect. And until we continue to refine that, we're going to continue to have I believe, some of the same challenges over and over again. And so my hope, as is yours, that we can get the fittest 40 men and 40 women in August on that competition floor, fighting for the fittest man and woman on earth.
Oh, I agree with you there. And thank you for having me. And just to your point, podcasts such as this one, Sevan and more, Andrew Hiller is a new guy in. He came in kind of brash, but the more I see from him, the more I understand that he is only advocating for positive things. The Morning Chalk Up, Brian Friend, there are so many people now who are trying to look constructively at things and are offering ideas, offering help, and are offering the community a platform to have a say on these things. So long may that continue. I mean, if we keep on going, we will get changes done. That's as simple as that.
Yeah. Amen, dude. Amen. Thank you for your time.
Thanks again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Snorri. We'll talk soon.